And now, for just a while, let's open the meeting up to questions from the floor. There are monitors scattered around. There are microphones. Just stand up, approach the microphones, and I'll give you an evasive answer. Yes.
Mr. Capp, you have spoken at many other schools and institutions. What is the difference between a school such as ours and an Ivy League college?
About $1,000 in my fee. I'll tell you, I charge Ivy League colleges $1,000 more for combat pay. Students at colleges like yours are so badly educated that when you dissent with a speaker, you simply stand up and dissent. You don't use the new Ivy League methods of beating the speaker up. That's why I charge them more. It's Medicare doesn't handle everything. Yes.
Are you for or against the student campaign to make four-letter words accepted in schools?
Am I for or against the student campaign to make what accepted?
Four-letter words accepted in schools.
Four-letter words accepted in school, yes. Now that it's illegal to use a three-letter word in school, such as God, certainly we should fight to have four-letter words used.
Recently, a Washington columnist wrote that we are in danger of having a guaranteed national income. What do you feel about that policy?
Now, they don't mean, and nobody means, in discussing the guaranteed annual income. We don't mean by poor those who are infirm, infants, and the helpless. What we mean is that great mass of the able-bodied who don't get outdoors much, except to the welfare office once a week. That's the poor, that great mass of militant, angry, demonstrating, marching, rioting poor. If we had only had the guaranteed annual income will save us so much misery. Just think if Tom Edison, in his day, they'd had the guaranteed annual income, that poor kid wouldn't have had to go through the misery of staying up nights and figuring out those little gadgets, such as the electric light and the motion picture to make a buck. He'd have been able to just loaf around New Jersey there and not go through that misery in his little invention shop. Arthur Miller wouldn't have had to go through the misery of writing The Death of a Salesman if there had been a guaranteed annual income. Jonas Salk could have hung around a drugstore instead of providing miracle drugs to be sold inside of it if there'd been a guaranteed annual income. I wouldn't have had to sweat blood trying to figure out little Abner if I, on my mother's kitchen table after the supper dishes were cleared, assuming we'd had any supper that night, I wouldn't have had to go through that misery if I'd had a guaranteed annual income. I tell you, it's the guaranteed annual income that probably was the last law they passed in Rome.
Mr. Capp, earlier in the evening, you commented on Little Orphan Annie. Would you comment on the social and political philosophy of that comic strip?
The social and political philosophy of Little Orphan Annie is possibly the direct opposite of the social and political philosophy of Stokely Carmichael. Neither of them entertain me very much. Although you do notice a resemblance in their hairdos. I will not say an ungallant word about Orphan Annie. After all, she's 76 years old, that child. But, you know, she's been getting away with this thing about Daddy Warbucks being her uncle. No, that's the way they check into motels. And you think she's a child. You know, she wears that dress underneath. Wow!
what do you think of sensitivity training? This isn't being done at colleges yet.
Now, what is it called? Sensitivity training.
It isn't being done at colleges yet. It's being done in students' home, and this involves students disrobing and discovering their sensitivity to each other by contact.
They call that sensitivity training now. Yes, but the old word for it was orgy, of course. Your mayor has just informed me that you have a city ordinance against it. What kind of... What do you do Saturday nights, for heaven's sakes? Sensitivity training, is it? Can you imagine a couple, about 27 of them, up in front of a judge and saying we were conducting a class?
In the December 1966 issue of Playboy, you expressed the opinion that you have more respect and rather prefer the 18-year-old who is in the search for the dollar than the 18-year-old who's a humanitarian. You also expressed some ideas about the term humanitarian. Would you care to comment on that?
Yes, you show me an 18-year-old kid who hasn't been in the world long enough to prove he can do one damn thing for it, and who wants to change a world he's neither contributed to or knows anything about. You show me a humanitarian like that, and I'll show you a pest. You show me a kid, though, who is motivated by the noblest emotion that can grip a man, avarice. You show me a kid who is motivated by avarice, and I'll show you a kid who's going to do something useful for society because it's the only way you can get rich. Yes.
Some people would put the Peace Corps on an institutional level as a folk hero, but you and little Abner seem to have been taking pot shots at it recently. Do you disagree with it in principle or just in the way in which it is done?
Let me tell you this, the background for my disenchantment with the Peace Corps. In its beginnings, I, like everyone else who adored Jack Kennedy and acclaimed everything he did, I felt that the Peace Corps was possibly not only his greatest achievement, but one of the great achievements of our time. It gave us another look at what young Americans were: selfless, giving, ungreedy, willing to help. It was an inspiring idea. I was so proud of the Peace Corps. I was so proud of being one of those, as a citizen, who was involved in it. Now, I was in Peru last summer, and Peru is a great place to visit if you're an Inca who was slaughtered by Pizarro 400 years ago. But if you've got any more interest in life in you than that, it's so dull that you'll talk to Peace Corps volunteers, and I did. Big, broad-shouldered kid came up to me, 20, 21, and asked me if I was Al Capp. Everybody else in the room was an Indian, and so And he said he was a Peace Corps volunteer. I didn't leave. I said, sit down. And I said, what led you to join the Peace Corps? And he said, just before I graduated from college, I read an article about the squalor and misery and neglect of the Peruvian Indian. He says, I couldn't bear it, and so when I graduated, I came here to Peru to help the Peruvian Indian. And I said, where did you come from? He said, Tulsa. So I said, well, now, look here. If you're really, really concerned about bringing some kind of help to Indians in need and squalor and Indians who have been neglected, you didn't have to come halfway across the world to find them. A bus ride from where you live, there are tens of thousands of them. I said, what is so unattractive about the misery and plight of the American Indian that you have to come 4,000 miles to help Peruvian Indians? And he said, I guess I wanted to take a trip. Now, this is what I say about the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps, to me, in a time when pockets of misery and want in this country are so desperate that they explode. What the hell are we doing sending young men and millions to other countries? We need them here.